Let's go to why communicate behind a veil. Who sat through my stuff before? You have. You have, obviously. You haven't. Okay. So this only this semester, right? Okay. 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 So you probably know the answer. So you're the new guy. Okay. So if Allah exists, why does he communicate behind the veil? We talked about this last night. Yeah. Yeah. You believe Allah exists, right? You have any doubts? Okay. So why does he communicate from behind the veil? What do you think? Okay. So sending a message to humans via humans, okay. So if someone, sure. So we agree that different messages work differently with different people, right? So what if someone just needs to see Allah? What do you think? Yeah. So veil being you can't see Allah, right? Why? Why not? That's a test. So you gotta have faith first, and then so then you can't prove this unseen anymore. So you can't prove this unseen anymore then if it's all about faith. You know how they say you gotta accept Jesus and then you'll see the light versus trying to prove Jesus's existence. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Good. You listen to Sheikh Hamza Karamali. That's how he explains it. He does. Yeah, the Sheikh there, he's really good. Um, yeah. So if someone tells you that, like, who are you, bro? Like, what makes you think like you have to see, right? Like this is the message is coming from someone with such highness, right? That the messenger is enough. Just like you have this human experience and human relationship with people where you've never seen the prime minister, but you don't doubt it, right? You've seen his ministers, maybe, right? You've seen his maybe a counselor, right? Someone from his cabinet, but you're not gonna doubt his existence because you haven't seen him. That's a good answer, I think. Chat agrees with the good. So these are good answers. What about what about something more deeper? So you have a case here where no one's seen. You're not convinced. You're not fully convinced. So Another great response. Great response. But it still doesn't fully do the job. Go ahead. Yeah. Hmm. So if you were to, I mean, because we believe in Allah, right? We believe in a supreme Lord. If he didn't send anything about his attributes, his names, how would you describe it? Allah says, "Laisa kamithlihi shay," right? There's nothing that you can perceive, imagine that will land you on anything close to a right understanding of or comprehensiveness of like or comprehension of who he is. Right? So why is that? We can build the argument that because Allah, right? Or if you're talking to a non-Muslim, for example, right, the concept of God or godliness is outside the parameters of human perception. So it's impossible for you to see God in these parameters, right? It's impossible for you to see God in these parameters, technically, if he is outside the framework of creation to begin with. Now, if someone was to say that, well, God is this way, and now we can see him, and he walked on earth, how does a creator enter inside creation? That makes no sense. When the creator enters creation, is he now smaller than the creation for him to fit inside creation? Right? What about before he enters creation? Then is he smaller or bigger? Right? So just logically, it makes no sense for us to even entertain the discussion of why can't we see God walking? Right? Because if you did, it wouldn't be God. Can't you just do anything? Okay. Good. And how would you answer that? Yeah. He's not supposed to have rules, right? Okay. So what you're saying is coming out of a place of like, if he is God, he should be able to do anything. Yeah, just entertain it. Like this is, yeah, because you guys have sat through it. It's different for you guys. Okay, cool, good. So if God can do anything, can he decide to not be God? Can he ungodify? Well, you just said he can do anything. So we don't say God can do anything, right? Now, how you now define of what God can do, because then they'll be like, the argument will be like, well, now you're putting limits on God. Not really. It's just if he's the God and this is just the essence of God and this is just how things are, how can you not claim that he can ungodify himself? Like, can he ungodify himself and enter into creation now? Then who's God then? If there's any being outside the framework of even like, right, that can enter creation, ungodify himself, then it's not a God anymore. Right? Hence, classically our scholars would say that when it comes to talking about the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is only in relationships to that which is from the possibilities, not from the impossibility. So what's an impossibility and what's a necessity? So impossibility will be, yeah, the question itself is impossible. Can God create a rock so heavy that he cannot even lift himself? Because technically he can do anything. It's equivalent to, so when you start to entertain this question, you're already on the back foot, right? The question itself is wrong because the question is the same as asking, can God not be God? And that's impossible. Okay, correct. Yeah, so you can take the discussion around how the moment we have defined the circle to be a certain way, and we have defined the square to be a certain way, right? Now it's rationally impossible for the two to be different. Now, if I defined one circle as a square, another circle as a circle, then the discussion works. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Yeah. I mean, if they don't see the light, I don't know what to say at this point, right? Like, there's only so much we can go with certain some of these arguments. And then if they don't see it, we move on to a different. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's like going into this rabbit hole, it's still not gonna help them or help you at the end of it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, because their understanding of nothing and something, they just don't get the fact that it's in worldly terms. Yeah, yeah, it's because of the English, right? So the way we say it in Arabic is that God's power to do the impossible, rationally impossible, is non-applicable, non-applicable. لا تتألق. Like it doesn't even correct. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't imply the impossibility. right? Because if it did, like, well, you can't even say because if it did, because it makes no sense. Because then it's like, can God be ungod? Can not God be not God? Right? It doesn't work at all. Cool. All right. You get the point? Why God communicates behind a veil? Don't take notes. Don't take. All right. Um, I think the next one's Surah Ikhlas, right? Okay. So we all read this, right? Often, especially when we're super lazy, we don't want to read the long surah, we read this one, right? Okay. Now, there's a video of, I don't know if you guys follow politics, Tulsi Gabbard. The video of her talking about, she was the head of NSA, Gabbard, American politics. Yeah. There's a video of her with Lex Friedman where she says, Hinduism is actually a monotheistic religion. Okay. Yeah. And she says that all of these different gods, they all go back to who? Trump. And that's the real God, right? Now, someone might make this claim to you. 'Cause I've had Hindus make that claim as well. Um, but our understanding of Tawheed is completely different, right? So when we say Qul huwa Allahu ahad, when Allah says Qul huwa Allahu ahad, how can you refute that with this? The answer is not on the slide. Okay. Okay. The original. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. You got it. Yeah. Yeah. So he was building to that. He just didn't finish the point. Yeah. Because one being, we believe in one being, right? Doesn't manifest into multiple beings all of a sudden. It doesn't indivisible. It doesn't divide into other things, right? Uh, as we say, وحدة الذات, وحدة الصفات, وحدة الأسماء, وحدة الأسماء. Okay, so sorry, وحدة الذات, وحدة الصفات, وحدة الأفعال. Okay, so oneness in Allah's being, oneness in Allah's attributes, as you said, right? Uh, only He has those attributes and nobody else. Even if there is a mushtarak lafzi, which is like when the name might be the same, laysa kamithlihi shay takes precedence in the sense that even if we use mercy for Him and mercy for mankind, that mercy is a completely different essence altogether when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a completely different thing when it comes to the humans, right? Whereas that the other train of thought, like the Hinduism, where like God manifests through other things, there's a belief that there's that belief that every person has a piece of God in them, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Um, yeah. Fighting policy. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So the question is that what is wrong with God manifesting to other local gods and semi-gods and demigods and whatever, right? Uh, what is wrong with it? I mean, as a non-Muslim, nothing's wrong with it, but then none of those are gods, right? Why can't you divide? Okay, so the same reason why Allah says in the Quran, لو كان فيهما آلهة لفسدتا. That if there were, or لو كان, yeah, so if there were more than one God in the heavens and the earth, it would have been chaos. Remember? We did this last year. So why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that there will be chaos? If there were more gods than Allah, there would have been chaos. Yeah. Yeah. So you have two sources of infinite power, which makes no sense. Yeah, correct. And what happens? So if that's ever the case, then the question is, who is the who has the ultimate power over the other? Like we can't even think of an organization without these structures, right? And now we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sure. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So they have power over each has the power over things that the other doesn't use. Okay. Okay. Um, so they align and agree. First of all, it's a hard one to build, really. That you have two entities with full agency and they align on everything, right? And let's just say they did, right? And no one really claims that anymore. Uh, yeah, okay, sure. Let's say they agree on everything. What's the problem? How is how is that proof that neither of them are God? You gonna answer your own question? Yeah, so you're saying the agreement itself is a nux, is a shortcoming. Sure, that's yeah. So now who is allowing the actions to happen? Which one? A or B? Now you're gonna say complete agreement. Wait, you need complete agreement for the actions to happen, so they need each other. Yeah, correct. So then yeah. So let's say they always agree. Who's letting actions happen? Who's allowing things to happen? God allows everything to happen, right? So you're gonna say, well, they're both allowing it to happen. That doesn't make any sense. What's the candle flame argument? Correct. Exactly. So yeah, I didn't know that was called a candle flame argument. But, oh yeah, exactly. So who's the actual cause, right? Who's actually allowing things to happen, right? So from an Islamic, so that this is why I wanted to kind of finish off with what we believe in Islamic theology as well, right? You can get these folks busy on like philosophical debates and stuff, but then eventually you're gonna have to bring them back to closure, right? And like we delve in these philosophical arguments for so long, and then the asl and the main intention sometimes gets lost, right? Yeah. So in that one, in the case of two gods, who started first? Who came first? Yeah, yeah. Like who existed first? And if you're gonna say they both existed, that doesn't like I just don't see anyone logically trying to fight that the argument. And the worst I've seen is like someone saying that your brain doesn't have the ability to comprehend these matters. Hence, so I'm like, okay, so my brain doesn't have the ability to comprehend this matters. Hence, God doesn't exist. That the argument doesn't make sense. They are. That is true. Okay. Yes. Yes. So even in the case of agreement, we say that both of them are not gods. Both of them. They're both limited. They need the agreement almost, right? Okay. Which one precisely? Because there's no completion of agreement. They're both they both need each other to actually bring the action to the once the action happens, the other doesn't have the agency over the action anymore, right? So who is planning it? Yeah. One is missing out, right? On the action. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So they cannot they're already losing agency even when they have agreement. The argument falls through. It doesn't make any sense. Cool. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Correct. Correct. So none of the beings are actually. So what might look like an agreement is not agreement, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that's where you've won the argument. None of them actually has that full power to begin with. Correct. Because once the action happens, someone has already lost out on taking the action, causing the action. And the way we define God, he has power over everything. That there's an actual God that no. There's an actual God that created them. Both of them are not God because they don't have absolute power. The fact that there's a sharing of power, one is the God of good and the other one's God of evil, right? The God of good doesn't have any power on the God of evil, and the God of evil has no power on the God of good, right? In fact, in this specific case, they're not even in agreement; they're in disagreement. They're on opposite polar sides. So then the question becomes then who has the ultimate power over the other? Because that's the God that we say. Because then who called this out? Yeah. Who has the ultimate power to overthrow the other? Yeah. And if they're both limited in power, then they're both not gods, and there's a God that created both. There's a God that created both of them. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a mental exercise. Yeah. They'll say that there's nothing. They're the same thing, but they're two different beings. That is a valid argument. Um, it might not get through to them right away. Yeah. Yeah. That creating these two beings, basically. Yeah. They're limited. We agree that they're limited. Yeah. So it goes back to the example we started off the class with, right? So yeah, so you're saying what's wrong with that? So the way we've defined God is that so it's like there's got to be power that ends with someone. Who is that being? And that being has to have absolute power and cannot be divisible. The moment power divides, it's not absolute power anymore. And when it's not absolute power, and when there's divided power, that means one being doesn't have complete control of the situation, only has part control of the situation. So how do you call that God then? Right? They might call it God, we call it something else. Because the way we're defining God, that cannot be. Okay? Yeah. No, yeah. Why define it? I'm trying to understand like why they would ask that question. Okay. Yeah. Uh, I mean, you can only go so far with books. Yeah. 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 So I mean, you can go after it with saying that these beings that you call God, even if they have powers, they can't be God. They're just beings with certain powers. But they don't necessarily have absolute control or even control things. It's just like a human that can like I don't know. You have a mechanic that can fix cars really quickly versus other mechanics that can't. Does that make him God? No, it's because it's just a skill. Correct. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions about this? Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a question? Um, okay. So bring it back to now the messenger of Allah, right? If you look at his life, like that is there's a lot you can talk about from his life that's dawah, right? Why go through all the hardships that Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So I'm gonna summarize this mainly, and then if we have another class, we'll go deeper into it. Um, why claim prophethood when you could have just claimed to be God, right? Why claim prophethood? Let's just assume this was a fake religion made by Muhammad, right? What if that is the case, or if that has any sort of reasoning behind it, why claim prophethood if he's making it up? He could have just claimed to be a god because Quraysh already had those concepts. You don't think he would have been able to convince them that him being a human is much more powerful than the stone they're worshiping? Yeah, yeah. You will be surprised. Yeah. So you think he's trying to differentiate? So think about the motive here. Think about motive. If someone's trying to claim, if someone's trying to make religion, what's the motive behind it? Power? Delusion, sure, but there's an element of power, right? Even if they're delusional, there's an element of power, there's an element of control, right? What better way to do that than to, right? They do. Yeah. Yeah. So Ahmadis don't claim him to be God. Ahmadis claim him to be the last prophet. Yeah. 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 Or he gets revelation. Okay. Yeah. Except there's no proof that he had any connection with those communities, right? There's no proof of any travel to Sham or nothing. There's no proof of him traveling to Greece or whatever, or further north in Europe to know about Christianity to begin with. Secondly, look how being illiterate now becomes a powerful thing for Rasulullah, right? He's illiterate. He's also in a society that's illiterate. Now, illiterate in the sense that they have an oral tradition, right? But they can't read necessarily. So how you're so right? So then the argument, you need to know the language, you need to know read, you know how to read. Yeah. And the fact that it's not just him, people in there was no one in Makkah that knew how to access those that material, right? Sure, it's this is a difficult one to tell someone because they're like, well, I can't verify this, right? Well, this is where human intellect comes into play. Like, do some research and why did he not claim to be God? Yeah. So in the case of the guy with the Ahmadiyya guy, it's not like he came with anything special. Hence, the question is irrelevant, right? In the Prophet in the case of the Prophet ﷺ, there's miracles that are happening, right? There's the story of like Surah Al-Kahf, right, where the Jews are asking, they're telling the Quraysh, ask Muhammad of about the people of the cave, the one who ruled the east and the west, Dhul, right? Uh, and the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, I'll get back to you. And he doesn't get back to them until 15 something days, right? And Allah teaches them, is trying to kind of teach us to say, inshallah, that's the story, by the story in the seerah. She's faking it. Not only 15 days, right? When Aisha radiallahu anha gets accused of adultery by certain Sahabas, right? What happens? The Prophet ﷺ, if he's faking it, he could come with a rebuttal within a day. But that's half a month. until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the verses of Surah Nur. Right? So from a personality perspective, you see that he's not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyone who studies it will see that there's something going on, right? He's not quick to react necessarily, right? And it's not like you have to figure out formulas, right? Your wife is being accused. You just have to come with revelation. He doesn't. It takes time. Yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. But I'm saying if he had ill intentions, he could have just defended her anyway. He wasn't going to wait for revelation. If he had ill intentions, he doesn't need to wait for anything to like even if sure he wasn't there when Aisha anha was they were in a caravan and Aisha anha got lost, right? And the Sahaba found her. And that's how these rumors started spreading, right? As a husband, if you have ill intentions, you could literally make something up and that's it, right then and there, but he didn't. So why even need that precedent of revolution? Yeah, well, I'm saying, why do you even need a precedent of revelation coming late? You don't need any of it. A lot of them did. Yeah. So I'm saying, why there's no need to even set that precedent. But sometimes it might be good. He could have, if he's making it up, yeah. If he's making it up, he could just say, Jibril came to me right now. Because it's not like the companions can see Jibril alayhi salam, right? They saw him sometimes, right? But there were other times where they couldn't see him anyway. So he could have made something up and it would have been fine for his followers, right? I got revelation. Yeah, there you go. Why need delay? Yeah. And delay makes no operational efficiency sense. Sure. I mean, it doesn't it's not even like you can go deeper than that. There's no need for delay to begin with. Yeah. 100%. Right? Right. I mean, he didn't live like a king. He didn't live like a king. He left a very humble life. Even when Islam took off in the Medinan time, the Prophet ﷺ lived a very humble life. See, that's more of a Quraysh thing, right? In Mecca. Yeah. So how and then how is a crazy person splitting the moon? And that happens in Mecca, not Medina. Right? Okay. So then talk about Rome. Holy Book of Rome. Yeah. Yeah. So the Muslims were allied with the Christians. Not allied, but they felt closer to the Christians because it's Ahlul Kitab. The Quraysh felt closer to the Persians because they're pagan roots, right? So what happens is that the Persians take over and beat the Romans. And this is while the Muslims are in Mecca, in a really low state, in the sense that they're being oppressed and etc. So the Quraysh now start taunting the Muslims that look what the Persians did to the Romans, and we're going to do the same thing to you, kind of thing. Right? In that moment, the verse is revealed that Rome has been defeated, okay, in so and so place, and they will come back and defeat the Persians in Bid'i Sinin, which is less than 10 years. And that ends up being exactly what happens. And actually, when the Muslims win Badr, they get the news that the Romans have now taken over territories from Persians. Right? So like a bulk of, because when we look at battle, like very rarely is one small battle deciding the whole war. Right? So like if you look at the timeline, it works out to when the Romans took I believe Jerusalem at the time, took back Jerusalem. So that's a proof. If he's crazy, he wants power, right? How does this one come? Yeah, right? How does that happen? And then eventually what happens is that when you're now trying to play devil's advocate, you get to a point you're like, how many of these things are you going to play that are you going to try to refute that? Right now things are just kind of adding up. And that's how if you notice how people accept Islam, remember I was telling you, it's never that one thing. It's a bunch of stuff adding up and they're like, okay, now, yeah. One of my friends who recently became Muslim, um, he was saying that that's what literally happened to him, right? Things just started making sense. Like it was just like it just felt undeniable. And then that push was a family member dying. Because then it was like, okay, I know Islam makes sense to me. When that family member passed away, then he's like, oh, what happens after death? Wait a minute, like I should accept Islam because I might die tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Death was that urgent. That's what brought the urgency into the. But going back, it's always going to be a bunch of things. Never, rarely is it one thing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then he passes away with his family members having no assurance that they'll be taken care of, technically. Literally what happened, right? There was nothing in the house, no assurance that his wives will be taken care of. His daughter, Fatima, radiallahu anha, will be taken care of. None of that stuff, right? So it's a lot of these signs adding up together. That's that's what from a Dawah table perspective, that's what you guys should be focusing. Yeah, yeah. So now the onus is on you to go investigate why, because if you die tomorrow, yeah, and that depends on the person. That depends on the person. Some people you just need one. It will make everything will make sense. Other people will go through hundreds and not. Have you met a skeptic before? Okay, there you go. Yeah, too annoying. Yeah, it is, but it will get to a point where you convene enough. How receptive they are and stuff. Yeah, because there does come a point where if you push beyond that threshold, you're only losing them. You're not. You're losing the momentum. Okay. Um, let's stop here. Um, I have an event. صلى الله عليه وسلم